True. No. And we're live. Welcome, everybody, to an Artful Life, curious conversations about the ways humans make and use art. Welcome to my co host, Melissa Heffelin, and welcome today to Eric March, who is an artist in his studio. And he actually did a phenomenal job surrounding himself by art, and there's art
Yeah.
in the background. So we're going to have a real treat today. And this is also a special treat for me because Eric is actually my drawing teacher from the Art Students
Mhm.
League of New York.
I
And
love that.
me too. And I've been
I do
taking
too.
classes with him for nearly a year now, on and off, because when we're in Switzerland, that doesn't work. It's too, the time difference doesn't work.
Yeah.
But Eric's art is really fascinating. It spans from huge public outdoor installations to big canvas oils to also smaller, very charming pieces of work. And we'll talk about all of this in the coming hour. So, welcome, Eric. I would love
Thank you.
to just kick it off by asking you about your art beginnings. Where did it all start?
Yeah. Way back, way back. First of all, thank you so much for having me on. It's such a pleasure to be talking with both of you, and of course, honored that you would have me on the show. I really appreciate that. Happy to share. Um, so I was thinking about like where did it start? And I was very young when I started making stuff. Like I can remember like as a 4-year-old even be like, wait, no, I don't want to go to play outside because I got to finish this drawing that I'm working on. So I was always doing it. I mean, I don't know about always, obviously not always, but from a very young age. And I think my parents saw some proclivity because they encouraged me. They sent me to art classes and stuff. And
Oh,
I
great.
think I was really the only one. I have 3 siblings, a sister and 2 brothers, and I was the only one of us who got sent to art classes. So something must have been a little bit different. I was the youngest, so they had already been through 3 of them. Um, and so I took class at like a local art kind of cultural center all through my kind of all through the years through even high school. Interestingly, I didn't really take art classes in high school because I was in band. So I was doing music as well, and that was like the elective was band. And But I kept taking class at this community art center. I kind of always knew that art would be something that I wanted to do. I don't know if I would have used the term professionally, but like kind of pursue it in my life. And I think it was my brother Andrew who, came back from college and be like, yeah, you could be an artist, and that kind of gave me an idea of like what like a career like that might like an idea of that, to do. Um, and I did do that. So I went to Indiana University where I actually got into art school then. So I did a BFA at Indiana University, and so I grew up in Illinois, from the Midwest, north of Chicago, and and like so doing art, but like always there was kind of a lot of things in the mix, like my family and my siblings, we hung out a lot together. We grew up on like an acre and a half, so we were always like wandering around the yard and the woods and like the field across the way. And I think what was interesting, one of the reasons I kind of bring that up is that we didn't have television as a kid. I mean, we had a television, but it was like a piece of furniture. It wasn't something you could actually watch because of my parents' rules about that sort of thing. And so we did a lot of things. We went outside. We like built stuff. We obviously drawing and we all did music and theater. It was a very rich life, but
Mm.
I I was always like a little disconnected from my peers because they'd come into school and be talking about the latest like
All
whatever
right.
on TV, and I'd be like, yeah, like I just didn't know, like a lot of like pulp culture
Yeah.
stuff that I didn't have like a reference for it. Um and and even still like today, things that are kind of like common cultural knowledge, there's kind of like a gap where I'm just like, yeah, I didn't get that the first time around. And so now I can go on YouTube and be like, oh, that's what everybody was talking about, 30 years ago or whatever. Um, but what's interesting about that, I think, is that it gave me like a little bit of distance in some ways, not so caught up in kind of what everybody else is talking about, but just a little bit apart. I wasn't like a social recluse or anything, but it did give me, I don't know, just a little bit of a different point of view that I think can sometimes be helpful for making art, or kind of seeing a situation in a slightly different way that's
Oh, I think
not
you're right about
necessarily
that.
kind of like connected with however other people see it. So, I'm doing my best with my children. I have two boys now, to deny them access to pop culture. No, no, they're a little bit more connected than I am. But I think it's I think in some ways it was, had some positive aspects, but also I think there is obviously there's a kind of connection that you can key into if you have like a common cultural conversation,
Yeah.
which I do and do not, depending on the
Mm,
topic.
But I
But
think
it,
it's also okay. I mean, I don't have it because I didn't grow up in this country.
right.
mhm,
So I always said I feel how that I'm a foreigner after all when people
yeah,
start talking about the shows or the references from their
yeah,
childhood.
yeah, yeah,
Um, I never felt like I was missing out because of it. And Nick at Night, when I came to America some 30 something years ago, Nick at Night was awesome. Nothing was a rerun for me. It was
yeah,
all
yeah, totally, totally, yeah, yeah. But anyway, I think that's very similar. Like
Yeah.
if you're
Yeah.
coming into this country from a different place, you're like you don't get all the references. But
yeah.
some of like the most rich art that we have produced as a country is from folks who've come from abroad,
Yeah.
or from other places and have that kind of slightly different attitude or approach or frame of reference, which is can be really interesting to explore and to experience as a viewer of art,
Yeah.
or of dance or music or
I
whatever.
grew up just like
So.
you did, Eric.
I mean, there's a strong musical element in Melissa's
Yeah,
back
there
Oh
story.
was
yeah.
music, and we had a television, but we were allowed to watch The Waltons and The
Mhm.
Wild Kingdom Mutual of Omaha and Little
Hmm.
House on the Prairie. And if our parents found out that we had watched anything else at one of our friends' homes, we had to read the Bible for equal time.
Oh my gosh.
And and
You got a lot of
otherwise,
Bible reading in then, I guess. Or you got good at lying. There's that too.
so yeah, all three of us did not have the same amount of social culture exposure as many people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say we didn't have culture, right? Like I
Right.
think my parents were definitely of the capital C culture, so we would get to go to the symphony, or we would see plays. We saw a lot of theater actually growing up, which was super fun and great. Reading a lot of books. We were like always a nose in a book,
Yeah.
all of us, like you know. Um, so there's uh, but what's interesting is like I think like in my parents' generation, there was definitely this idea of kind of like high culture and low culture, right? Like high culture
Yeah.
was like Shakespeare and
Beethoven.
Aeschylus and Beethoven, and then low culture was like all that trash on TV and whatever. Um, but I think over their lifespan, and certainly mine, that kind of distinction between high and low has kind of compressed to it's like all kinds of culture, all in and you can enjoy whatever you want, and it's kind of there's obviously different kind of weights culturally a little bit, but much less than there was before,
Mhm.
and in some ways it makes it a little challenging to be like a well-cultured person, right? In this day and age, because you have to know about Shakespeare and Aeschylus and the symphony and Beethoven and like all and all the great art in the museums, the great masters and everything.
And
But
the
then you
Clash.
but then you have to also know about the Clash, and you have to know like the history of hip hop and like
Mhm.
what Britney Spears is doing, and like all that stuff is like kind of like it's a whole part of the like kind of like a giant cultural conversation. And boy, like I just don't have time for all of that. I do what I can, but there's a lot of like
Mhm.
cultural input time, which
And speaking of that and all of those artists and what you need to know, build for us, if you would please, your artistic family tree. So, not your family, but your influences. Who are your closest influences? Your cousins, your aunts and
Yeah, yeah,
uncles?
yeah. So I actually I asked a question of in my drawing class yesterday about like what's your favorite favorite drawing or something like that. Um, and and I think I probably have to start with children's books because that's really like my first exposure to art and drawing was
Didn't
through
see that
children's
coming.
books.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, but and I think that's common for all of us.
Mhm.
Um, my parents also had this great Smithsonian collection of comic book comics that was issued probably in the early 80s. And then it was also a collection of newspaper comics from like the beginning of comics to today kind of thing, which we just poured over because my parents didn't really, they kind of frowned on like comics because that's like low culture, you know. Um, but it was, if it was came from the Smithsonian, then it was okay, you know, that we could read. So that was read a lot, over and over again. Um, and then there was visits to the museum. You know, if we want to talk about kind of high art, which was the Art Institute. So grew up in
Yeah.
Chicago. The Art Institute is an amazing institution
Yes,
with
it is.
certainly a great impressionist collection. And I can remember I took French in school, so we had a big field trip where we went to see the work of Caillebotte, Gustave Caillebotte, and and there was another like big Monet, you know, like one of these like big blockbuster shows. But a lot of times it was of impressionists because they have such a strong impressionist collection. So that certainly made an impression. And that I think the impressionist kind of crystallized for me a little bit about what kind of art I wanted to make, or like the idea of making art to kind of capture a specific moment in time, and the idea of making art where you're going out and you're drawing in front of the landscape, or you're kind of alla prima, you know, getting out there with your palette and your hat and your brush, or in the Moulin Rouge or something, you're like drawing your friends at the table or something like that, and that kind of model of um, kind of getting out there and drawing from observation, kind of trying to capture things quickly, capture events as they happen, was certainly a big part of kind of like my early idea of like what art and art making was. And I can remember like in high school going to some, you know, show of my friends' bands or something like that, and not really knowing what to do with myself. So I pulled out my little sketchbook and drew. You know, that was my way of kind of capturing that moment and also keeping myself busy. You know, if I'm in an awkward social situation, people are like, "Oh, what are you drawing?" You know, but those artists like Degas, you know, Caillebotte, Monet certainly had like that was kind of early forming in terms of what, you know, art could be,
Mhm.
and other stuff that I might see at the Art Institute. That expanded as I got into college and, you know, taking art history classes, and I had some fantastic professors who would, you know, just sit us down and be like, "Hey, check this out," you know, like in a drawing class or a painting class, you know, just check out this artist, you know, this is, you know, this is so and so, or this is, you know, you wouldn't necessarily, or contemporary artists that might be interesting to us or to them, and so that kind of expanded a bit. And certainly studying modern art was interesting. I remember seeing Franz Klein's work for the first time in our history class, being too excited. You know, Franz Klein was like Franz Klein is like this big kind of like action painter. You know, that got me the idea of, you know, art can make you kind of want to jump out of your chair, like get moving, you know, and that actually kind of became something that I was interested in doing, is like making art that had movement to it, that was exciting, that kind of you know, got people kind of involved, aware, energized. And I think that's still something that I aspire to in my artwork. I have a lot of people running around and doing things in my work, which
And
which is part of that. Go ahead.
and it probably also speaks into, and I think a great segue to talk to you about your public art, which of which you have a lot. So,
Yeah.
what was that sort of the origin of that? Would you think that you started doing really big commission pieces outdoors?
So I think the public work, I got interested in it I think so. After going to school at Indiana University, I moved to Brooklyn
Yeah.
in 2001, like August of 2001, like right before
Okay.
September 11th, essentially.
Ouch. Yeah.
Um, and I was working in a I was working in a studio that created work like on demand as like decoration, essentially,
Mhm.
which was, I mean, I was like looking in the Village Voice for want ads, and there was like classically trained artists wanted. I'm like, you can't get like you can't get jobs like this, but there it was, you know. So that was interesting. But so I was living with my brother in New Jersey, and then commuting in to work before I finally moved to Brooklyn in August of 2001. 9/11 happened. I got fired. Things were crazy, obviously. But I eventually got a job at a gallery that in Brooklyn, Park Slope Gallery in Park Slope, Brooklyn, that specialized in, one of the things they specialized in was work of the WPA. So work of like the
Mm,
1930s, Works Progress Administration, easel project stuff. And that got me exposed to a lot of these kind of 1930s mural artists, who, you know, like influenced by Diego Rivera and
yeah.
some of these
Mhm.
other kind of like giants of like mural making of that time. And while they didn't necessarily, obviously they didn't have murals like in the gallery, it kind of got me in that world, which I had studied a little bit in college. um, but that idea of creating public work and what public work could do kind of, on a grand scale, and what that kind of system, you know, like it's like another way of presenting art that they did in the WP, where it's like a federally funded artwork that went up in libraries and, post offices and, you know, schools, public housing projects, and examples that are still kind of around in New York at that in that time. Um, that kind of planted the seed, but I wasn't necessarily into it until later, when I started making kind of larger figurative work. So this is maybe around like 2014. And
Mhm.
I was like, yeah, like, you know, like started getting bigger and bigger. I got a studio. So I was like outside of my little apartment. And I was like, oh, you can actually get bigger, make bigger. And then at some point I was like, yeah, you know, like I think this could work. Like this could work as a mural, you know, and I got the idea of like, yeah, I want to do that. I want to have art that can be enjoyed by folks who are just walking by, like the public, rather than only if you know, have the money to buy work and have it in your home. It's a different kind of, um, way of presenting and engaging with the public through art. It's a
Mhm.
different process too. I was reading this interesting post by another artist who talked about kind of the difference between private and public art, and she was looking
Mm.
at the art of like the of like France and Paris in like the 1820s to 1880s. So this is a transition from the like state sponsored, the French Academy, like state sponsored art that was grand, you know, history paintings, mythology, um, pictures of Napoleon going into Egypt or whatever. Like these are grand story paintings that also had like kind of served the state, right? So that's like kind of a, you know, propaganda in some ways.
Mm.
Um, and then that kind of transition from that, you know, the dominance of this academic work to the Impressionists, that was very different in subject matter. You know, had like, you know, the Bohemians hanging out in the Moulin Rouge, and you had like pictures of the dancers and like prostitutes and your friends like having a picnic and a boating party. You know, like very different subjects that were much more private. They were more, you know, sometimes more sexual in nature, more
Mhm.
explicit, but certainly not these kind of like big national or, mythological or historical storytelling epics. They're much smaller, literally smaller, but also kind of more intimate and a little bit more risque sometimes. And it was kind of like it was just like an interesting way of kind of thinking about those two things, because I think there is something to any public work that is like, it's just a different process than private work. That I like, this work behind me is like all stuff that is developed in my studio from my own thoughts, from my own kind of working through trying to figure out the world and my place in it and what I have to say about it. But public work, oftentimes it's a commission, because usually larger scale works, you have to get permission to paint it on whatever wall you're going to paint it on. But also, it's a big time commitment, can be a big commitment of materials, and that's oftentimes, it's a commission, whether it's a town commissioning somebody to like do a mural on our, walls in our downtown, or a corporation or a company that wants you to do some big thing in their business lobby or something.
I'm going to throw up
But
something.
but oh, please don't throw up. No. But piece in New Haven, downtown New Haven.
Is this the train station?
That I did? That's the train station. Yep.
Okay.
But there, it's like it's more, because it's a commission. There's a conversation between the commissioner and the artist that can, it can be, like any commission, whether you're an illustrator or an artist who works on commission regularly. There's this kind of conversation between what the client wants and what you want, and hopefully you can make a happy conclusion to both those things. And some of the best artwork ever made in the Western canon were commissions, like by the Catholic Church. Like you think of like Renaissance Italy and the Sistine Chapel, and all that, like those are commissions, and that's something I think about with this public work, is like with all the constraints that all those artists had in the Renaissance, like they made work that changed the world, and still, even still 500, 600 years later, is majorly impactful on artists like myself, as well as like anybody seeing it. It has this effect. And so that's my aspiration, right? I can't just say, hey, like, yeah, the client is a lame, and so I'm not gonna, make a good thing. It's like it's like, this is an opportunity, right? This is an opportunity to create something that lots of people will see. And like, it may not be exactly all the decisions that I might make in my studio, different subject matter maybe, or different style or something, but it's my job as an artist to make the most of that opportunity, right? To make it feel like it's really something that people can appreciate, that has something to say, that communicates something of my values, as well as the values of the people that are commissioning the work, or of the town that's showing the work. Like that piece that you just showed, I mean, that's like you drive into, you get off the train in New Haven, and like, you see it, like that's a big thing, and that's something I take seriously.
If I were to walk along there, would my legs and the legs on the pedestrians in the artwork be the same size, or would I be bigger or smaller?
I struggled with that question a lot, actually. So the original design was that was actually waist height, and my original concept was to make it waist height, so you could like walk along and it would be the same size. But the location got changed to this, which is actually much more public than other location, and I was like, should I include more of the top and keep it the same size? But eventually I popped everything up in size, and one of the reasons I did that was that a lot of people will be seeing this from across the street. So what you're seeing there is a little bit of the street. That's like
that's a good thought.
And like now so the bigger it is, and large scale public work, oftentimes is viewed from far away, whether it's from a highway or from across the street or from apartment buildings, and then like you see it a block away or whatever. So size is definitely something you can really play with and expand in like outdoor murals. And so I did. So they are bigger. They are about a 1.5.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. Yeah, if you look at
something like that
at the pose. And apparently you are in the middle of doing something else, and Maria is excited about it. I'm just putting up
awesome.
a comment we just got. So you're
congratulations.
So
now. That's great.
Yeah, so I've got a show coming up at Whitney Center here in New Haven, coming up soon at the end of May, and then it's going to be kind of up through September. And a lot of the work that you'll see here you caught me at a good time because by the end of the month, this will all be out of my studio and in their gallery, which is great. So
Yeah, actually, I'm
a
dying to
fun
look
opportunity to share.
at. Yeah, I'm dying to look at some of the amazing art behind you. So we'll do.
Yes, let's do.
I
Sure,
also
sure.
Monique
Um,
Bilek says hello. By the way, she just popped into the messages as well, into the comments as well. So
great.
Eric a
Awesome,
long time ago.
awesome.
So maybe also, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool.
So I guess for the work, let's start.
Mm.
Let's start with this one, which is called After the Parade up
Okay.
here.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's on my wall. Um, and you might be able to pop up an image of that because it's probably a little easier to
Yeah.
see.
Yeah. That's a little
Yes.
better, but we want to see you.
There you go. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So you can't see. So that one, this was like one of the first big figurative compositions that I did, mostly from my imagination. So this depicts the Coney Island Mermaid Parade. It's called After the Parade because it's kind of like after the parade's ending. So the Mermaid Parade, if you haven't been to Coney Island or haven't been to the Mermaid Parade, it's like this big kind of aquatic, maritime themed parade where people dress up obviously as mermaids, but also as like sailors and um, jellyfish. I went one
It's
time
crazy.
with a group as an octopus puppet. Um, you've got like King Triton and all this stuff. So everybody's up in costume. It's kind of like a carnival kind of thing, which is of course visually very exciting for an artist. And photographers, you can find a kabillion photographs of this parade because it's so magnetic. It's so charismatic and visually. And you have a lot of people walking out with topless, like women. So that makes good pictures too. Um, but but Coney Island became kind of like an important touchstone for my work. So when I moved to Brooklyn in 2001, I started kind of a group of large scale figurative paintings based on the show De La Guarda, which was an off-Broadway show, which was super cool, kind of like this aerial dance thing. That was super inspirational to me. I want to make some paintings about that. And in trying to make those paintings, I realized I didn't have the skills I needed to put together like a big figurative composition like that. So I went back to school. I went back to study with this guy Andy Reese, who was a private teacher in Brooklyn, who became a really important mentor and teacher who taught me a lot about drawing and painting and composition, but also taught me a lot about teaching. So Nina, we talk about teaching. He's a fantastic teacher. He's like I just visited him a couple weeks ago, and like the guy just knows like everything. Like he's like this encyclopedia, more than encyclopedia. He just knows all sorts of things, obviously about art history, but all sorts of other things. It's super interesting to talk with him. You're like, didn't know that, didn't know that either, but this is interesting. But so coming out of school, I wanted to make big figurative work. That was something I was interested in. I'd seen like Rubens and Michelangelo in art history, and I was like, I want to do stuff like that. But it took me a while before I actually had the skills and the information to be able to do it. Like 4 years of school was not enough, I should say.
Yeah.
So I went back, I studied with Andy Reese. He also suggested I study at the Art Students League, and I did for several years. Took a whole bunch of figurative classes. Took another anatomy class, which was awesome. Frank Borku's class taught me so much. And finally, after trying it out a couple different ways, and then finally leaving school, being on my own for a while, and then teaching an anatomy class. Finally, I felt I had like my hands around the information I needed to put together a painting from imagination that had a lot of figures in it. Now, this isn't entirely from imagination, because eventually I did get like models to pose for some of these things, and I myself posed for a lot of them. My brother posed, my wife posed, my kids posed, but a lot of the kind of the design process, the moving things around, like I finally had the confidence and the knowledge to be able to like pretty successfully construct figures up to a certain point, which was super fun. Like, it was crazy. It took me like 4 years to make this painting, but it was so fun. Like, you can see it's this kind of this like knot of figures kind of all weaving in and out, and what I discovered is, like, with a tight composition like this, if you change one thing on the right side, it can have ripple effects across the rest of the painting. So it's always changing. But another thing that I was trying out with this was oil sticks, which I hadn't used before. Yeah. So I was doing for this painting, I did a bunch of pastel studies on the beach in Coney Island, just to get an idea of like how people were moving, what the colors were.
I saw those on your website. I really liked
them. Yeah. And those were great. Those were really fun. And I liked that look of the pastel, and my studies for this were also in pastel. So I kind of wanted a way of like drawing with paint. And that's what the oil stick was. And it created this really interesting texture that was kind of really bumpy. And so you kind of got this like broken color. So it turned out like exactly how I wanted it to, which is really fun. So that was another kind of fun thing. But this is like this.
I really appreciate about it that that the figures are drawing based. I feel like that they're form based. It's not. Yeah. There's the vein of drawing from copying photographs right now produces a very different result than what you have here. And I really appreciate that. It's lovely. And the other thing that I love is the humor, because there's a saying by I forget his name, but a rabbi, he said there are 10 fallacies in philosophy. And one of them rung so true with me. And that is that seriousness is more profound than comedy or humor. And it isn't. It's a wonderful way to connect and share, and it's every bit as profound. And I just love the humor in this piece.
Yeah, I think the humor, which is not only in this piece, but in the piece behind me too. I think it's a way, I think, for me to not get too big for my britches. Like I think we all have, well, not all of us necessarily, but I certainly kind of aspirations to grand ideas. You read about you look at the Sistine Chapel, or you like see these big Rubens paintings, and they're kind of these epic things. But is my life epic? Like, like not really. I mean, we're maybe living in epic times. That, which is part of what some of these pieces are about. But it's also about like taking the seriousness out of it a little bit. There are definitely serious things going on, but they're not all serious, right? And like, what about my particular life? My particular life is comfortable. So different artists will have different ways of handling that. Certainly there are artists I can think of who are like very dramatic, and it's kind of like, okay, buddy, okay, which, I mean, like, yes, they're dramatic things, but how you kind of handle that can turn people off. And obviously, as you said, like, there can be a lot of wisdom in humor, and a way of communicating that kind of opens a little door. It's not just like boom. It allows you to approach something with laughter, as opposed to weight, which sometimes you need the weight, and sometimes you can have both a little bit. And I think of the work of Shakespeare too, or Rembrandt, where there's kind of all things. There's big, heavy things, in some Rembrandt, you'll have like the crucifixion of Christ, and there'll be like a dog pooping in the corner of the etching or something like that. There's this kind of idea of a painting that can have many, many different aspects of the human experience in one piece, or over, a series of works that I also like. I think about including a broad range, trying to, thinking about that within a piece. This piece that you're seeing here, speaking of weight, right?
Which is why I brought it up. I mean, I'm dying to.
Yeah. So this piece started like the you talk about like the artistic roots, right, or legacy of this piece starts way back. So I was fortunate enough to study in Italy for 6 weeks at the very end of my time at Indiana University. They had a study abroad program, and it was over the summer. And I learned a little bit of Italian, and I learned about Renaissance art history, and we did a whole bunch of drawing in the city and in Florence, and visited other cities. And one of them was Rome, and we went to the Borghese Gallery, and I saw this Bernini sculpture of Aeneas. So Aeneas is like he was a Trojan who, after the Trojan War, fled Troy, went on this big journey, 7 years, and then ended up in Italy and was, one of the founders of Rome. That's like kind of part of the founding story of Rome is this Greek journey from Troy to Rome. And Bernini has this beautiful sculpture of this almost like spiral of Aeneas carrying his father. His father's carrying like this little thing that's like the family god's relic or something like that, and then his son is kind of right at his legs. So it's 3 generations in this beautiful like spiral shape. An amazing sculpture, right? But that got me interested in that subject. But also later, that kind of stuck in my head, and I was like, what would I do? Like, my dad is like taller than I am, and I don't know if he weighs twice my weight, but like he's heavier than me. Like, how could I even pick him up? Like if we were fleeing Troy, like I would be like, I can make it 3 feet, and so that kind of idea of like putting myself in that situation and kind of like the absurdity of it was an idea that I had, either for a sculpture or for a painting or something. And then around the time when I started this piece, there was a huge like wave of immigration, both across the world, like out of Syria, and then across the southern border. There was all this talk about immigration, like large volumes of humanity moving from one place to another, not just in our country, but across the world. And also the rhetoric, the anti-immigrant rhetoric that we were getting from Trump and a lot of folks on the Republican Party, kind of using immigration and immigrants, kind of demonizing them and using them as a kind of like a political tool. This was back in 2016. How times have changed. But so those two kind of things, and kind of like reacting to that kind of political situation, or that political kind of propaganda and this ideology, which is something that I was like, yeah, this doesn't feel so good. Like I don't want to live in a country, right, where immigrants are demonized, and this kind of like we're making scapegoats out of people who are just trying to come and work, or just happen to be from somewhere else, or happen to be of a different skin color or speak a different language. And those two kind of mush together. So I tried a couple different ways of doing this painting. Actually, it started horizontally, but the idea being like, what kind of weights, what kind of barriers are folks who feel the need that they need to leave their homes to go somewhere else, right? That's always going to be a challenge, even in the best of circumstances, right? It's always going to be a challenge to leave your homeland and to go somewhere else where, especially if you don't have a lot of resources. But then there are all these other barriers that can be put in place depending on the institutional structures of the place where you're going, or the places between where you are and where you want to end up, or where you do end up. And so exploring that, like, what are the challenges these folks are facing? What kind of weight do they carry? Who gets to be carried? Who's carrying, right? And who am I in this piece, right? Like, am I this guy? Like, am I the guy being carried? Because in some ways I am. Am I the carrier, right? Am I the kid? And who are you? Like, who do you connect with in that piece? My dad posed for this, actually.
Oh.
Yeah. That's a study.
Wow.
Of him.
Love it.
And And like we'll all be in a situation, oh, many of us, right? We are caring or caring for someone, all of our parents, as they age. Like if we are fortunate enough, right, to have our parents reach an age where they will need our care, and so it's about immigration, but it's also about caring and carrying other folks. Um,
So is that oh, that's very different. Okay.
that's very somewhat related, but very different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is a piece started around the same time. I was, again, there's this kind of lineage from Coney Island. Like I had this giant idea like that after the parade painting was originally going to be like 3 times as long and have several different scenes in it, which have now since been broken up into that lifeguards painting that you saw and another painting that's not made yet. But kind of thinking about the water and the ocean and people in those environments as like a stage to tell stories. It was kind of like an open stage. So around this time, I also read In the Heart of the Sea, which is a history of the 1820 wreck of the Essex, the whale ship Essex. So there's a whale ship out in the middle of the Pacific, an American whale ship, and a whale rammed the boat and sunk, or so ran the ship. And so the sailors had to like jump into the smaller whale boats, and they were in the middle of the ocean, and they had to sail for thousands of miles to get back to. They ended up trying to get to South America. Along the way, one boat was completely lost. Others resorted to cannibalism, and by the time the journey, some of them actually did make it, but the crew, which was a mixed race crew, like all the black sailors were eaten. There were white sailors who were lost, but the only survivors were kind of part of the Nantucketers who were originally on the ship. There were different reasons for this, from how much the sailors had eaten, or were able to eat as part of like either you're a seaman or a captain. The rations were different. Racial makeup, just physically like different bodies and body types. But whatever the case, it wasn't a good look for the story. And the Nantucketers actually were Quakers and were abolitionists, and that essentially their survival was at the expense of these black sailors was an uncomfortable truth that they did not want advertised. But the author of the book kind of pulled out, just a page kind of pulled out this idea about this huge epic story and like horrible journey and everything, but kind of pulled out that kind of racial dynamic. And of course this is like right around like the time of like Black Lives Matter getting rolling, and then like the election of Trump the first time in 2016. And I thought it was like an interesting metaphor for that kind of preying on one for the survival of the other. And there's the captain, right? Oh, captain, my captain, who's preying on a fellow sailor for survival. But the thing is, like, it's not a good situation, like for anybody, like you don't want to be on that boat, like in either position, like it's horrible, which is why we got this rope kind of like wrapped around both of them, this is not, nobody's a winner, and I think that's true in our country too. Like nobody's a winner when we make these kind of enemies of one another, or lesser thans, one in favor of the other. We have to work together for our happiness, right, and our survival.
Yeah. So does this play into the similar theme, right?
Yeah. So this was inspired by an article I read in the Times, like back in, I don't know when it was, maybe 2020. There's around this time of like the immigration, and there was like, these crazy photographs of these like boats crossing the Mediterranean from North Africa into, trying to make it to Europe, which of course are still going on. And we see these kind of images like again and again, as whatever situations, right, compel these folks to make that arduous journey. And it's super dangerous, especially in the vessels and the overcrowding that we see in some of those images. But again, it's kind of like the idea of kind of putting myself in their shoes. Like, why? What would be required? What would need to happen for me to take a journey like this?
Yeah.
And I probably would if the situation required it, for my family or whatever. But then also like, who am I? Kind of like, who am I to look at this? Who are we to look at this? What is the relationship? Are we on the boat? Are we just looking from a safe distance in some gallery or studio or in my imagination? Like, is there a hypocrisy there too, of kind of how we are or are not involved in these kind of situations that we see?
Are we sitting in the boat reading the newspaper?
Yeah, that's right. That's a little self-portrait right there. Yeah. And these are questions that I don't have the answer to necessarily. In some ways, what did Rilke said, kind of live the questions, right?
Like making art is one of the ways we think things through.
That's right. That's right. And thinking about this, so this is a study for a much larger piece that is not done yet. But I already have ideas how I want to change it, which I'm kind of exploring right now. But I guess with all art, right? Like all the art that you're seeing here, because it's all from me, right? So like part of my process, and it can take a while, like some of these pieces took me like 4 years. Some of like I started and then like 2 years later, and then 3 years later they're finished, But that kind of idea of time, just simply from my circumstances, like I cannot afford to be in the studio every day, like working on these things. So I work on them as I can, and I can stretch them out for quite a long time. But the element of time allows me a little bit of distance from the original concept to question it, to see if it still feels true a year later, 2 years later. And sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it's like, I thought that was really cool, but it's just not working anymore. And other times it's like, yeah, there's still something here. And I still want to say this. Maybe I'm going to say it a little differently, and that's where the changing and the editing comes in. But you're just trying to make it true to myself, true to perhaps the people that I'm depicting. If I'm not depicting myself, I'm depicting somebody else. And
like the ringmaster of the circus, as it seems, having his pulse taken by a black nurse or doctor. I mean, the more you look at it, the more you pick up, right? And
so there's actually a relationship between this piece and that lifeguards painting that
which I'm dying to get to.
Yeah.
All right, my favorite.
So there's, as I said, like some of these were kind of conceived all this in this grand kind of story. But you see the little boat in the back there that the lifeguards are going out, and the study is kind of just the boat. So if you see these together, there's that boat. There's a luxury yacht, just like not doing anything over there. But on the other side, on the left side, right beneath the ropes, there's the little boat, which is what the lifeguards are going out to see, or not going out to see, right? We have
they are not in harmony.
They are not in harmony. Yeah. But again, there's this idea of what is the right thing to do. We think, well, yeah, the right thing is to go out and save those folks who are at sea and in trouble, but not everybody thinks that is the right thing to do, right? Maybe half our country doesn't think that's the right thing to do. But it's also not just about politics. Like myself, like I'm not always doing the right thing. Like I'm living my life, but like, am I doing enough? Am I doing enough to help folks who need help, to even the playing field, right? To expand empathy in my heart among folks that I know. Am I taking an easy way out for my own comfort? I don't know.
Yeah. And this is, we talked about this earlier, but this is a self-portrait again.
There are two self-portraits in there, actually. One on each side of the boat.
Okay. Yeah, I can see it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I also like sort of, I also find the tellingness of the anonymity of everybody but you.
Yeah.
With, their head in the boat, also very telling.
Yeah.
And the uniformity of their outfits. I mean, there's so many layers here.
Yeah.
And then that very crude sort of childlike painting of the luxury yacht, which just does not deserve any more attention than what you've given it. So, to me, those are all parts of the story that I'm seeing in this. So,
Yeah.
And even the rope being, entangled around, the other you's feet.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
And yet there's something very funny about, I mean, as tragic as it is also a very funny picture,
Sure. And I think that's part of it, is like the absurdity, which we see every day on the news. And it's tragic and it's funny kind of at the same time.
And Candace Bertotti has been very engaged with she's commenting too along the same lines. So yes, from her.
Candace is great.
Dan Smolin says he sees a lot of Eric Fischl in your work.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, interesting.
I mean,
I wouldn't say Eric Fischl was a huge influence, but I did see some of his paintings. I think it was, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, maybe 8 years ago. He did some gigantic paintings that kind of juxtapose like migrants like washing up on a beach, I think, and folks in like a fancy art fair. That kind of was like a diptych. Which was definitely striking. I was like, oh yeah, I forget, I'm forgetting if I had actually started some of these pieces at that point or not. But it was like, that image definitely kind of like stuck in my head. I was like, oh yeah, like I'm thinking about this too, I mean, in different manifestations, but yeah. Good observation, Dan.
Yeah. All right. We still have lots of questions, but we also have lots of some more work to actually would love to just quickly. That's sort of a, that's back to your Brooklyn times.
This is actually, it was a commission that happened during the pandemic. So in 2020, like the pandemic hit, and then about a month later, I got a call from an art director who was in charge of getting new artwork for a hospital environment in New Haven, hospital, and wanted to commission work from local artists, and found my work online and asked me to do what turned out to be 3 kind of large figurative works. And it was funny because, you're like, oh, you're talking to somebody, they're like, oh, art for a hospital, and then you're like, oh, do you want landscapes or abstracts, and they were like, no, we want figurative work. I was like, are you sure? But they wanted, something that kind of evoked the neighborhood. And then this one that you're showing now, that was for a different clinic. That's Cornell Scott Hill House Center. And that was kind of this long, frieze of, a neighborhood scene, which was a lot of fun to make. And they actually made reproductions of it. So they have several clinics in and around New Haven, and I think all of the clinics now have that painting in them. So anybody who goes to Cornell Scott Hill will see my work, which is kind of fun. It's like, oh yeah.
Cool. That is very cool.
I love that.
Like, if you got your shots, you saw my painting, which is cool, which is cool because it's something that I certainly like in the pandemic and thinking about Black Lives Matter and equity and kind of access to culture, who gets to make it, who gets to see it. It's like, thinking about different avenues that my work could be displayed, and think about who my audience is. who am I making it for? Like, that is a question that I am still thinking about. Part of me, of course, is ambitious and like I want my work to be seen by fancy critics or something like that. But the other part is like I want it to be seen by people who are in the neighborhood where my studio is, or like in my town or other folks, folks who've never set foot in a gallery. I want them to see it too. Like, I want everybody, but that's a little broad, so it's like,
Right.
who am I talking to and why? Like, why am I creating a piece that will address this particular audience? Because we all have somebody that we're kind of imagining will see it. And again, like the public artwork is a different audience than what somebody who might come into my studio or might go in a gallery, and also like a different purpose. So there's the kind of directive or that I was given for this piece is different than some of the maybe more politically inspired work that I'm working on in my studio, but maybe both are to the same purpose, right? To create a sense of empathy, to create a sense of community, to create a sense of support, whether that is something that I'm like seeing when I bike around New Haven, or if it's something that I'm seeing a need for in our national conversation, or seeing a need for in our local conversations too.
There's a question related to that we wanted to ask you, and that was, what would you say to an institution or an individual wanting to commission a public work of art? What do you wish they knew to get the best possible result for something that was for the public?
I mean, I think if it's for the public, like, do they know the public? I guess is an important question. And do I know the public? Because I might not know the public. If it's somebody in like Kansas City or something, it's like, hey, like, I'm going in blind in a lot of ways. And if they have a good handle on what their community is and can communicate that to me, that's going to help me make a piece that makes sense in the context that it's going in. Whether that's the people, what they care about, what the environment is, having a kind of a clear idea of what's wanted, or maybe even better, what's needed, is a good place to start. We won't always necessarily, because I need stuff too, right? Like there's like the me part and there's the them part, right? And we want to come to a happy meeting between those two concerned parties, right? And the public, obviously, has a, if not a direct say, kind of like is a partner, or is at least the audience, right? For a particular piece. So then it becomes this kind of conversation that I have to think about, like, again, like what's important to me. If they're asking me to do something, create something that is really against my values, that might not be a commission I can take in good faith, right? Or it's like, okay, can I make something that pushes this envelope into something that I am genuinely excited about and want to share, or kind of furthers that goal of a greater community. And if so, then let's work it out, But having clarity on those things, I think, helps to speed the process along a little bit.
Get a better result.
Yeah,
right.
For sure. Yeah. So Melissa and I have about 10 more questions for you.
And rapid fire. Let's go.
Right. So we're going to rapid fire the last 2 questions to you, which we ask of all our guests. It's sort of our buttoning up. It's been phenomenal. Eric, I could go on forever longer. And, I'm also used
for the audience sake, let's button it up.
We're going to wrap it up. So our penultimate question always is, actually, Melissa, why don't you take it? Because that's sort of your question, I feel.
What advice would you have for someone beginning an art career, whether they're young or not? What do you wish you had known? What would you say to them?
I would say probably 2 big things. One, get your skills together. Like figure out, make sure you have a technical command of your chosen medium, whatever that medium is, painting, photography, film, whatever. Like, it is difficult to express yourself in a medium that you cannot control well, which I know because like I went through that. I was like, oh, I've got these big ideas, and I was like, oh, I can't do them yet, but I got there eventually. Oftentimes as a young person, we may not have a great deal of clarity, at least this is true for me, of like kind of what we want to say, which is fine because like, you're still young and like figuring out yourself and the world. And while you're doing that, you can be getting your skills together. You can get your training so that as you mature and as you kind of develop ideas about what you want to say, you will be ready with the tools to say it. The other thing I would say is that for most of us, it takes a while. It's a lot about small breaks, less about big breaks. Like, yes, you may get super famous super fast and be driven around in limos to like fancy openings. Like, that has happened and may happen to you. And if it does, great. Like, you deserve it, you know. But if it doesn't, like, just keep at it. Small breaks. Keep, you know, if it's like, I haven't painted in 2 months, but then you paint in the third month. And you know, it's like, all I can do is, you know, the weekends, or all I can do is Thursdays from 2 to 4 because of my work schedule. Like, if you stack up enough Thursdays from 2 to 4, like, you will eventually develop work. It will take a lot longer than if you were there 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, but it's not nothing. And if that's what you can do, that's what you can do. All of our situations are different. Like, I work at a desk, not the whole week, but like I spend a lot of time doing like teaching or web design, you know, like there are other things because art is like, doesn't always pay the bills all the time, you know, on time. I mean, I sell my work too, but like it's not consistent enough. So if I want to be able to consistently pay my rent, there are other things that I do, and that makes all of this work take longer because I can't get it. I can't just plow through it as much as I might like to. But that's my situation, and I'm gonna make it work the best I can. So it's like, be in a hurry, but be aware that if it can take time, and just keep
I
at
love
it.
the small breaks part. That's so important.
Small breaks.
When you're in art school, you think about the Whitney Biennial and this and that, and really it's a million small breaks that make a sustainable career where you can stay at it and contribute.
That's right. That's right.
Well said.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Last question. What is your, this is the impossible question, by the way.
So, I'm ready. I'm ready.
I'll ask you in 2 different ways. Way one, what is your favorite piece that you own of art?
Yeah. Oh, okay.
And the other way of saying it, the house on fire, other than your 2 boys and your wife and the cat, what are you grabbing? What are you taking with you?
Okay. Wait, so the first part was favorite work that I own.
And it's a question that just asked different.
So I don't have like tons of art because art costs money, you know. I do have all my work, right, which is nice. If I was to save one piece, it'd probably be this one. That was a seminal work for me. And I don't know.
We never made it to the far side of the studio. Why did you turn your camera on?
Let's do a little tour.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
First of all, here I'm working on some clay figurines to help me with the composition of the big boat painting. This is going to take forever. There are like 30 figures in that piece, but big ambitions takes a long time. This piece is called Middle Passage. I made that. I was also inspired by something I saw in Coney Island, the honoring of the ancestors ceremony. If anybody's seen that, it's really special. This is the big piece
The big
based
boat
on that
piece.
big boat piece based on the study that you popped up. So there's the study. This is a full size, although actually when I stretched up this canvas, I was like, oh, I actually think I want to make it bigger. But first I got to retool the composition a little bit and then kind of make some decisions. But I can't get much bigger than that. So I'm going to have to get creative. Maybe I'll put it on a roll or something. I don't know. But yeah, so, and then windows and everything. I feel so fortunate. So this studio is in Erector Square, which is an old toy factory. They used to make the Erector stuff here, Gilbert Toys. And it's now like a whole bunch of art studios, and it's like 5 minutes from my house. So it's cool. And there's a really nice community here too. We have a big open studio the third weekend of October every year. If anybody wants to come visit Erector Square, check it out. Yeah, Eric, I would definitely take my wife and my 2 boys and my cat. Definitely.
Yes. I knew that. I knew enough about you to know that. But that was the part that was also going to come with you. And I look at what I have in my apartment. I'm like, I don't know. I mean, there's emotional connections to just about everything I have, right?
Yeah.
It's true.
And also, like, it's not worth my life to go back. There's that.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, I'll make some more. We'll make some more. If it burns, we'll make some
more. Hopefully, inshallah.
Yeah, right.
Eric, this has been as fantastic as I hoped it would be.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks for your interest, and for all of you listening, thank you for hanging out for so long. I really appreciate it. And
the beauty of it is, this is going to hang out on my LinkedIn forever. Also streaming live right now to YouTube. So for those of you, who are watching replay, you found it. And for those of you who maybe didn't catch the beginning, you can come back to this at any time and watch more of it.
The beginning was awesome.
Mind-twisting and and we'll be at it again next month. So please stay tuned for our next edition of An Artful Life. And Eric, thank you so much for your generous
Eric,
sincere pleasure.
It's a real pleasure.
Definitely.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. Take care.